everybody, thank you so much for coming back to my channel and for liking and commenting. I really appreciate all of your thoughts, and I appreciate that some of the work that I've been doing has been helpful to you. And I'm glad that you guys can learn from my mistakes, which leads me to a question that I have for you. So I am not a crafter who plans things out ahead of time as I am doing them. I just kind of try things out and kind of just go with the flow, and I make a lot of mistakes as a result. So my question to you is, would you prefer that I edit down my videos so that you basically just see what I do to get the final result, or do you want to see all the mistakes and stuff in between? I know most crafters kind of do a more streamlined presentation where they just show you how to get the final outcome and there's no mistakes and everything turns out perfectly. So just let me know what you guys prefer. I'm happy to do either way, but if there's a big consensus one way or the other. But I am not somebody who tends to plan things out, and I am somebody who makes a lot of mistakes, in part because I'm kind of a lazy crafter. I don't know if the rest of you guys feel the same way, but like some of the techniques and stuff that people do, they're beautiful, but I just don't have the time for that. Like, I'm trying to fit in my crafting in like half-hour chunks here and there, and you know, some of these methods take like hours and hours, it seems like, and I just don't have the patience for that. So I tend to use a lot of shortcuts, and I'm not very precise in my crafting. So just that as a caveat. So today's video, I am going to show you the steps I took to make several cards, and I made several mistakes along the way, and I'll take you through my thought process on some of those. But let me know if you'd prefer just to kind of have a, you know, here's the end result kind of video. Before we get to that, I'd like to share a few of my maybe final thoughts on the Betterpress system. So I've been playing around with it for about a couple weeks now, and some of the things that I really like about it, I like how easy it is to use, and by that I mean it is, you know, for all the difficulty I had in getting a good impression at first, it is fairly straightforward to use, and I like that it seems to be it feels like there are fewer steps to get a good impression with the Betterpress than it does like if you're using regular polymer stamps. And the detail that you get with the Betterpress plates, I don't think is something that you can get with the clear polymer stamps. Now, with the caveat on that being that I do think that some of the old red rubber, like really stiff stamps, I think you can get a similarly sharp impression, fine impression, although you don't get that debossed feel with it. But you know, I haven't used rubber stamps in a long time, and I think most of the stampers are kind of going away from the rubber stamps just because the polymer ones are so much easier to use. You can situate them exactly the way you want them to be because you can see exactly what's going on. So for that, for the precision and the fine detail, the Betterpress is definitely a winner. I will say it is a nice to have. I don't think that it's a must to have. One of the things I really liked about the Betterpress is that it reminds me a lot of a toy that I used to have when I was a kid that my grandmother gave me. And I'm wondering if any of you guys know what I'm talking about, because I've Googled this, I've tried to find it on eBay, and I can't. And I thought it might be a fun gift to get my son, but I can't find it anywhere. So let me know if you know what I'm talking about. It was basically a letterpress kind of system, but it was Disney characters, and you would color the Disney characters on kind of like a fuzzy foam, and then you'd put it through the press and it would make stickers. And so that was a really fun thing that I had when I was a kid. And so this kind of reminds me of that, I don't know, it's just kind of a much more tactile experience in a lot of ways. There's sort of an alchemy to it. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe alchemy is not the right word, but there's a different sense of satisfaction in creation with the Betterpress, if that makes any sense. And maybe it is because you get that tactile result at the end. But anyway, that's one of the things that I do like about it. One of the things that I struggle with is the limitations of just having to have the plates. And obviously the plates are expensive. We know that they're expensive. It's nice that you can use them with the glimmer foil machine. I haven't done that yet. But the fact that they are expensive is obviously a downside. But the other downside is that they are very limited, I think, in terms of use at the moment. There aren't, unlike stamps where you can have like lots of different images that you can kind of arrange however you want. There isn't that so much for the Betterpress plates yet. Right now, the plates tend to be like full card face plates. They are you know, ones that don't have a lot of small elements. You can't really create a scene with them. You can't really create something that feels really original and unique the way that you can with stamps. So I hope that that's something that as the Betterpress becomes more used and more companies come out with different plates for it, I'd really like to see, you know, like an alphabet so that I can do like monograms, and that would be a really nice gift. I think especially for like a teacher gift, I'd love to be able to do like a monogram card set to give teachers. And one of the things I'm going to be doing in a little bit, I think, is I'm going to try to show you some teacher gifts that I can make with this, because I know we all, you know, are searching for ways to give teacher gifts during the holidays without breaking the bank, right? So that is one of the major drawbacks at the moment. So, you know, for that, I guess I would say it might be good to hold off on the Betterpress if you don't feel like, you know, you want to do just plain face cards with the images that they have, and wait until they come out with things that you can be a little more creative with. And I say that with the caveat also that I know, I'm sure that like Jennifer McGuire or other people who are really talented with crafting are going to come out with really unique and original ways to use these face plates that I haven't thought of. Absolutely. But for me at the moment, they are kind of limited. But I do really like the effect that you get with them. When I make cards, I tend to use a lot of different elements. And so, you know, a lot of that tactile debossed feel that people really like about the Betterpress kind of gets lost with like whatever embellishments I'm using or whatever mixed media I'm using. And you'll see that in some of the cards that I make and stuff. And so like, you kind of don't get the sense that, oh, this is something special, this is kind of different than like just stamping or something like that. Where I find that the Betterpress really shines for me is on the interior of cards. So on the interior of cards, oftentimes, you know, it's plain with a sentiment, but one of the things I really like is being able to use some of the plates, just kind of giving it a little bit extra touch. It looks more refined. It makes it look more expensive. It makes it really look on the interior of the card like this is a professional card. This is a card that you spent a lot of money on, that you went out to a specialized boutique and like got this card. It just adds something that I don't think my cards have had before, using just like a stamp or something like that to do an interior sentiment. Like this really gives it kind of that extra special touch because there isn't the embellishments, the other pieces that you're laying over it. So somebody who's holding the card can really feel that this is debossed here. They can really see like this is a letterpress system, and you know, the really fine lettering here and stuff like that would be hard to get with just a photopolymer stamp, I think. And so for me, I'm going to start doing that with most of my card interiors, I think, is using the Betterpress. And I think even having a bunch of interior sentiments and things like that I pre-make. And that way when I'm ready to send a card or make a card, I can go ahead and just pick the interior sentiment that I want to use, just glue it in, and then be ready to go and be a little more flexible with my card making that way. So anyway, like I said, final thoughts. It's a nice to have. I don't think it's a must have at this point. That might change based on what else they come out with. If they have like more flexible plates, if they have more, you know, smaller pieces that you can kind of arrange however you want, if they have alphabet letters and symbols and things like that that you could make like your own stationery with, then I might say like, you know what, this is moving to the must-have territory. But right now I think it's just, this is a fun thing to play with. I enjoy playing with it a lot. It kind of brings me back to being a kid, like I said, with that letterpress toy that my grandmother had given me. Yeah. So I hope you find that helpful. Stick around with me as we make some cards together using some of the plates on the Betterpress. I had several pressings of different plates that I had done from a previous video, including this butterfly plate. So I decided to go ahead and use that one as the start of a card. And I just went through my stash and just looked at what I have. And I have a lot of pre-cut papers from various kits that I've had, which is great to have on hand. And this is kind of just my process. I just look and see, like, what do I think will look good, and try out a different paper or two, kind of see what might fit and what doesn't. I finally settled on this kind of grassy green color. I think it brought out the leaves that are already embedded in the paper. So now I'm just going to cut down the panel that I had previously made so that it can actually fit on the card. The papers had been kind of irregularly sized because they were foreign papers, and just using one of the Spellbinders dies, rectangles, layering dies, to go ahead and make that the right size. I like to put mats behind the front images of my cards. I feel like it just adds that little extra touch that makes a card look and feel kind of finished. I was thinking I might want to do a patterned piece of paper as the mat behind the card, and so I found this one that had kind of leaves and a theme that I thought would go well with the bird and the green grass of the card base. Now here is me being super lazy, guys. I told you I am a lazy crafter. Maybe I should have named my channel that, The Lazy Crafter, because I really am. So rather than actually measuring anything, I just kind of clip with the scissors kind of where I think the mat should be, this about the right size, and then I just cut it on my larger cutter. I never really measure anything. I just kind of eyeball it. I know, it's terrible. Here's my trial and error process. When I got the mat made, I realized, you know what, this is just too busy. Even though it barely peeks out from the sides, like, it just didn't look good. It just made it look a little too busy. So again, here's my process. I'm just going through my stacks of papers, just kind of seeing like what would look good. Would a really big contrasting color like that pink work? Would something else work better? I just, I'm trying it out. I finally settled on this light green color, and I thought this light green looked really nice, just a subtle contrast, and kind of plays off the green in the leaves of the paper again. Something I've learned in all of these years of crafting is to do the back and the inside of the card before I finish the front. Because if I do it the opposite way around and I try to put the Made by Stephanie label on the back after the card is done, all of the embellishments and everything like that will make it so that that back stamp just doesn't come out right. Same thing with putting the sentiments inside. Here I am, I'm going to go ahead and use the Betterpress to make a sentiment on the inside of the card. I've really liked having these pre-cut card bases that I mentioned in my previous video when I was talking about papers. And I do have to give you guys an apology, and I don't think it's just me having brought up these papers. I know there were a couple of other crafters that were talking about this particular brand, Crane Lettra paper, being so much cheaper and just as good as the Betterpress paper. When I bought it, it was $24.99 for a pack of 200 pre-cut card bases, and after I looked just recently, after some people gave me comments about, oh, this is not the price, it actually like tripled in price. So hopefully it'll go back down again shortly, because this is a really useful thing to have, is these pre-cut just white card bases. And I'm going to find myself using them for everything. I know I used to just cut down the 8.5 by 11s myself, and this is so much more convenient. I'm like, why did I not do this? Even if they weren't the letterpress paper, just having the pre-cut card interiors and bases, just for matting and everything else, is just so much more convenient. And like I said before, I really like the look of that debossed sentiment on the inside. I think it just gives it that little added touch of class. So I'm just going ahead and taking a look at what do I want to do with this card at this point. I hadn't even really thought too much about what the actual card was going to look like. First of all, I'm taking a look at different sentiments. I always keep a stash of sentiments pre-made just to keep my card making going a little more quickly, a little more smoothly. So I'm just going through the container of different sentiments that I have, just kind of seeing what might be a good fit. I had an extra plate image that I had made, and so I decided to try a technique I've had success with in the past, which is coloring the image and then using glossy accents over it. And it just really brings out a really vibrant color. So you can see here, that's one of the images that I've made in the past. That one was with the Simon Says stamp butterfly kit. One big difference of this is obviously the thickness of the paper I did with the Simon Says stamp one versus this one. This is the handmade paper that's a little more delicate. And with the Simon Says stamp one, I actually used distress oxides in order to color it in. And here I'm using watercolors, and I think that also made a big difference in how it came out, which you'll see, again, this is one of my mistakes. This is one that does not come out particularly well. The coloring with the markers came out fine. It certainly wasn't as nice as the image that I had made with the Simon Says stamp set with the Distress Oxides, and obviously the Distress Oxides are always going to blend better than this, but glossy accents are some of my absolute favorite tools to use. I think they just give everything such a nice elevated look. The shine, the raised texture, the smoothness. I often use the glossy accents for just kind of highlighting a particular image in a card. And you'll see I do that later with kind of also mixed effects. But for this particular one, you'll see that I really did make a mistake. So here I go, leaving it. It has to set for like 24 hours. I've made the mistake before of trying to move something with glossy accents or cut it out, put it on a card after just a couple of hours, and it is usually a little too goopy, and then I end up messing it up. So wasn't going to go ahead and do that. However, as you can see here, the paper was just too delicate. It just soaked up all of the glossy accents, and you can see it kind of became stiff there, and it's not raised the way that it normally would be. And it also got all over my glass mat, and it's stuck. It's really, really, really stuck. I told you guys that I would show you my mistakes, so there's one of my mistakes of this video. And I did have to go at it quite a bit with the scissors to try and pry it up. But thank goodness for that glass mat that is so durable and such a great crafting surface. The same way that I cut out sentiments ahead of time, I also have embellishments and different images that I cut out and color and do stuff with ahead of time. So this is, again, that image from Simon Says Stamp. And I was like, you know what, why am I making a completely new image? I should just use the image that I already have made. Just make it easier on myself. That's why I make them ahead of time, right? To make it easier on myself, I do a bunch of them all at once, and then I have them to use in different cards. Now I'm just kind of looking at the layout and kind of seeing like where does it fit best, what kind of angle should I place it at, how does it fit with the sentiment that I chose. And as part of my process, kind of going back and forth, I realized I don't really like that sentiment there. I think it's a little too pale for that image, and so I decided to go ahead and pick a different sentiment, and this is one of the card fronts that I had made in a previous video, the one that I had ruined with the tape behind it. So you can see there that some of the sentiments are ruined, but you know what, that's okay because some of the sentiments came out okay and I can still use those. So that's what I went ahead and did, and just cut those out with the matching die that came with the Spellbinders sentiment set. And they cut out very nicely, and again, this is one of the things I really like about what the companies are doing these days, is having this single cut sentiment strip set, and lots of companies are doing this. Simon Says Stamp is, Hero Arts is, I have some of all of them. And it goes right in my stash, and I can go ahead again and then pick out sentiments whenever I need to without having to go through the whole process of stamping or plating or die cutting or whatever, and I can just kind of just focus on continuing to craft. But in this particular instance, I didn't like the original sentiment I had picked out, and so I went ahead and cut out a new one. Now I'm just going to finish off the card by picking out the background that I want for my sentiment. And I have all these scrap papers that I keep in a bin. I'm sure you guys are like me, like all these nice pieces of scrap paper that you're like, I can't throw these away. I can still do something with them. So I do. I ended up using the scrap from the background actually, and then I covered it with a Wink of Stella, which I always love. I tend to use Wink of Stella with almost everything. I love a little glitter in my cards, and then just adhering it to the card base. Adhering the butterfly, and I just use scrap pieces of foam from foam panels. I keep those around, and I find it just more economical than using the foam tape, and it works just as well. So adhering that butterfly to the card panel, and then my card is just about done. So how do you guys think it turned out? I think it turned out pretty well. I like the way that all the pieces came together, and the background with the flowers and leaves and stuff embedded with it, I think really work for the garden feel of the butterfly card. So yeah, hope you like it. For my next card, I'm going to go ahead and make a panel out of one of the plates for the Betterpress, and this one is like the wishing you happiest of birthday, and it's kind of a stylized scrolling image that is very intricate, and you can't really see it too well in that portion of the video there. But I had the thought kind of just in my head of what I wanted to do, and I wanted to do like a watercolor background, but I was very curious to see if I could get the watercolor to kind of land in the scroll work. I would hoped that like the way that the water would pool with the colors, the scroll work would become very visible and darker, and like the rest of it would be a watercolored panel background. But unfortunately that didn't work, and it just kind of came out a globby mess. So you can see there that like you can't see the scroll work at all, and so I decided to switch tracks and try doing embossing with it. So I put some embossing ink on the plate, and I went ahead and I did the Betterpress the same as I always would, and then I just put embossing powder. So I wanted to see if the embossing powder would resist the watercolor, which is something I've done before, so I anticipated that it would. So I'm just quickly drying the embossing powder there. And then when I paint over it, the embossing powder will resist the paint colors, and we should be able to more clearly see that delicate scroll work that is part of the Betterpress plate. And you'll notice here, guys, that I do tend to do like rainbow colors whenever I'm doing kind of a wash background. And that is a combination of both because I'm lazy and not that creative, just because I know that those colors will look good together and everybody loves a rainbow. And if I try to like mix and match colors, oftentimes I'm not great with color theory. So this is just the easiest way to get something that's gonna look good. So there I am just drying the watercolor, and I'm going to go ahead and just make it a little bit darker. And then here you go. Here is the finished look with that scroll work, and I'm kind of bending it a little bit because the water does make the card bend. And I know a lot of people said that the cotton paper acts a lot like watercolor paper, and I actually didn't really find it to be that case. I found that it was less sturdy than the watercolor paper was. Now, the interesting thing is on the one on the left-hand side, I did do the Betterpress plate in there, and I just did the Betterpress. There was no ink, but you can see the water on it actually kind of washed out that that image on the left-hand one completely. Like you can't see anything at all. It kind of like flattens the paper out. So I decided to go ahead and run it through the Betterpress again, only this time with the ink. And the interesting thing here, you'll see I'm re-inking my ink pad. My ink pad was completely dry, and I have not used my ink pad very much, so I'm curious if other people have had this issue as well. Like really, I'd only used my Betterpress for, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 printings, and I'm already having to re-ink it. So just curious out there if I'm the only one who's having that issue, or if other people also have that issue. Now, comparing the two images, the one with the embossing powder and the one where I just inked it up, I find I prefer the one that I just inked it up at. This is my process, guys. I find I just experiment, and then what works, what doesn't work, and I find that you know what, the embossing powder one just didn't come out as well as I would have liked, and the previous one where I just did the watercolor and I saw if the watercolor would pool into the debossed image did not work either. So here I am going back and almost using the Betterpress the way it is intended, just doing a plate press directly onto a colored cardstock. I'm just going to go ahead and use one of the sentiments from the Betterpress collection to go ahead and make an interior sentiment for the card that I'm going to make. And again, like I said, this is one of the things that I find is the strength of the Betterpress is with those interior sentiments and the way that it just adds a really nice feel to the interior of the card. Now I'm just going to go ahead and put the finishing touches on the card, putting it all together. I'm going to use a foam panel to adhere it to the back. And I like that those foam panels have like a sticky side as well, which makes it really handy. And I'm going to go ahead and use these super tiny gems, and these are my favorite, and they are nail art, and I just got them from like eBay. Amazon sells them. I've got a link to them down below. They're super tiny, really subtle. I really like them. They come in this package of all these different colors, and it was super cheap. And just using the gem picker there, which I also have a link to. I prefer the gem picker that has the rubberized side versus the wax side. I find that those work a little bit better with these super tiny gems. And that's basically the card, guys. That is the card finished. And, you know, again, it ended up being a super simple card for all that I tried these different methods on it, but that's the way that I work. That's kind of my trial and error process, but I think the card itself came out pretty well, and it'll be a good card to have in my stash to give away for birthdays. Now for my next card, I wanted to do a watercolor technique again, but I wanted the technique to kind of go with the image that I was going to be pressing on it. So deciding to use this flowered image, which was the original image that came with the Betterpress, I decided I'm going to put that in the center, and around the edges I'm going to make it kind of look like leaves, and then I'm kind of do a blue background, and then the center I'm going to try to do the flowers in kind of a pinkish rosy color. So I just went ahead and I, watered down the paper so that all of the inks would kind of flow together really nicely, give me that nice watercolor kind of effect with all the different colors. And so this one, I think I kind of overworked it a little bit, and you'll see later on what I mean about that, the kind of overworking it. But hey, that's art, and it's trial and error, and so this is my process, guys. So I'm just going to go ahead and ink it up and run the Betterpress plate through with the watercolored panel, and this is how it comes out. And this is where you can see like it's really overworked a bit because the lines of the Betterpress kind of get lost in that muddiness, but I thought it worked out okay enough to be able to make a card out of it, so I decided to go ahead. And I decided to use the paintbrush to kind of move some of that pigment around to try and make it so that the lines of the image from the Betterpress were a little bit more visible. So I think that helped a little bit. Then I went ahead and used some of the Nouveau Glossy accents, which again, I love. You'll see me use the same things over and over again because there's certain things that I just love to use, and glossy accents are one of those. So I did that to kind of make that stand out. Have to let it sit for quite a while, so 24 hours later, and this is what it looks like. I think it has a certain kind of charm to it, even though it's not quite as good as I would have hoped to have it turn out. I wanted to have it more like the butterfly that you saw in the previous card, where it's very defined. So I think in my next video I'm going to try doing some of that with the distress inks and see if that makes a difference in how the colors kind of just really pop. I'm just going ahead and I'm making a card base that kind of matches the colors from the card, kind of draws in some of those soft pastel colors. And I'm also going to go ahead and make an interior sentiment for that. And as I go ahead and use these again, these are really great, you guys. I love having those to be able to do the interior sentiments and being able to create that debossed feel for the interior of the card base. And look at how elegant that looks. Now I've got almost all of the elements of the card all set up, so I'm going to go ahead and just assemble it the same way that I do almost all of my cards. And you'll see that I also have a penchant for top folding cards. I just feel like we don't see that very often, and I like oftentimes the way that it looks with just the different images and stuff that I make. The horizontal images I think just look really nice in a open top kind of card base. Go ahead and I prop everything up on foam almost all of the time, and just adding a little bit of glue there to adhere it to the card base. And that's the Art Glitter Glue, which again is my favorite glue. It glues really strongly. I much prefer glue to tape. I've used tape in the past, and then I'll go back to a card several months later and the tape just falls apart, but I never get that with the glue. So just adding a few final touches here. Sentiment from my stash for the exterior of the card. And here I go again with kind of my laziness because I just go ahead and cut a flag kind of tail to it. And I know they have like different punches and stuff that do that for you, but you know, mine might be a little off center, but at the end of the day, nobody's really looking that closely, and it's just faster to do it this way. Same thing with kind of making the mat for the banner. I just kind of clip where it is and then use my paper cutter to go ahead and cut it to the right size. And it might be the right size, it might not be, but again, I am a lazy crafter, so this is what I do. I was making this, I realized the sentiment from the original sentiment strip that I picked out just didn't pop enough against the card. So I decided to choose one in that bright blue because I thought it just showed up better against the rest of the card. And just going ahead and putting it together now and still putting it on that same background because, again, I'm lazy. There you go. So I liked it better with the wings of the banner clipped off on one side, so I just went ahead and did it that way. Again, popping that up on a piece of foam tape, and again, those are pieces from foam panels, leftovers, and I find that it's really economical to just use the leftovers in that way. So there is my finished card, just making sure that all the glue sticks and that the sentiment is where I want it to be, and that is the finished product. So let me know what you guys think. Is this card a winner? Do you think it looks too muddy, too messy? Let me know in the comments if you guys like this card or if this is a don't do this one again. I think it's not the most professional looking card necessarily that I've ever made, but I think it still works. Now going on to my next idea, again I'm going with the rainbows here, you know, very creative as I am. And I'm just using some watercolor markers to see if I can just make them blend a little bit and see if I can use that then as a background, if that would be faster than using the watercolor paints. Came out too streaky though, so I decided not to go ahead and use it. You'll see the Betterpress paper there also kind of pills. It's really not made for watercolor. I know other people have been using it as watercolor paper, but I just don't find that it works nearly as well. For the next card, I decided to go ahead and use different paper with the different plate. I was originally going to use this with the rainbow panel that I had just been working on. But again, this is my background process where I do trial and error and you guys get to see all of it. So again, if you decide that you don't think that this is a good thing to see all the background and all of my mistakes, just let me know and I can fast forward through this next time. But this is another mistake that I made, so I'm doing this and I had measured it out. My measuring was not precise. The diamond that I created to make the image press on ended up not being really as precise as I would have wanted to be. You can see kind of at the top there that there's not a point, but I was like, well, maybe I'll try this out anyway. And I found I just didn't like it nearly as much. I was originally going to put it on a mat of the card like that, and it just didn't look good. So tried it out, didn't work. So, you know, that does look pretty terrible. And so in addition to the diamond shape being a little wonky, I found that the paper background there of that handcrafted paper, which I reviewed in a previous video, just didn't look as good as just printing directly on that handcrafted paper. So that's what I decided to go ahead and do. And I liked the idea of the leaves and the flowers of the handcrafted paper, kind of paralleling the leaves and the flowers on the Betterpress image there. So I thought that worked out nicely, and I decided to just go ahead and use that as my card starting point. Pretty robin's egg blue, kind of a shimmery look to it. I don't know if you can tell. And I thought it was really pretty and would go well with the bird themed card. I thought it needed another something extra with the card, so I went ahead and decided to tie a ribbon around it. And my tying skills, my bow making skills are not really on par, but again, here we go. Lazy crafting, like I said, so I just kind of make it up as I go along, and I think it worked out okay. Putting a little bow on the bottom there of that card to make it kind of just have a little extra touch, a little extra embellishment. And then I just went ahead and finished off the card like I usually do. Again, a foam panel behind the main plate, doing that interior sentiment with that debossed feel with the sentiment and the image. And then putting that on the interior of the card, putting my special Handmade by Stephanie stamp on the back of the card. and then putting some gems on it. Again, those tiny little gems that are actually nail art. And there you have it. That is the completed card. I think that one turned out pretty well too. Again, I love the feel of that handmade paper. If you touch it, you can really tell how delicate it is, and really see the details of the flowers and the leaves that are embedded into it. And I think that just works really well with the bird theme. And I decided to leave that exterior card blank with no sentiment, because the interior sentiment I thought did a good enough job of conveying what I wanted it to say. So those are all the cards that I have made in this video. I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you found it entertaining. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, and let me know what else you'd like to see. On my next video, I think I'm going to work a little bit on something different. I think I might do some work on an idea I have to make some teacher gifts for the holidays. So anyway, let me know what you'd like to see, and thanks for watching.